we are chatting with Phil Garrison, who is the director of Stacy, which was the other doc in this block. And it was an interesting pairing of these two films because both about families, which is why we named the block the way that we did. It is so interesting for me talking to documentary filmmakers, Phil. One of the things that's interesting about running a film festival is that the films end up, even though they were made a while ago, we end up screening them, at a certain point in time past when they were all created, all in a group, and inevitably they speak to something about the moment in which we're screening them. That those correspondences and resonances have been really, really interesting for us this year because there's so much going on. That is the case when it comes to narrative filmmaking, but it's particularly stark when it comes to documentary, because documentaries are so often about kind of drilling down around a particular issue or event or dynamic. And seeing a film like yours that was sort of crafted around an absence and trying to connect across that absence felt really particularly touching in this moment. So can you talk a little bit about how this went from being a really personal experience with you and your family to a creative catalyst, the transition between it being something you lived through to something that you really felt the need to film and share?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And that's a good question. It was the coming together of two things. One, just an outrageous story. I mean, I say outrageous. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, I just it's just an incredible story when you think about what happened and that Stacy even was out there and that we were able to connect. So that's just an amazing story in and of itself. And then unrelated to that has always just been my desire, to be a filmmaker or to make films. I've made videos and films since I was a kid that I've never actually launched out and done this. This is my first film. This is my first documentary, my first film ever. So my first legit film. I've made tons of films, but so those are two separate, unrelated stories. And on one hand, we're connecting with a family member, and the story is just remarkable. And the love and the rejection and the hurt that she felt, but then my family who totally embraced her. Then on the other hand, aside from that, I'm thinking, well, I'd like to tell I'd love to make a film. I'd love to do something. Then I thought, well, what story would I tell? And then it was just like, well, of course, what story would I tell? I have one right here. This amazing story. And it was difficult because I'm so close to it. Sometimes I would, the earlier drafts, I would, I'd have to work on those. But so that's it. I don't know if that answers the question. Go ahead. I see Alan is joining us.
Alan is joining us. Let me just connect with him. Hey, Alan, can you hear us?
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah. Okay. Good. We can hear you. So we're here live with Phil. I don't know if you heard me make the announcement that we're going to be catching up with Adam after the encore. So you and I'll talk about that after this. But so we're going to focus on Stacy for right now. And what I just said to him was that it was really interesting in a moment like this to see a film that was kind of created around an absence and trying to reach across that absence. Had struck me in a different way because we're screening it in this moment. And so I asked him how such a personal family story then becomes a film. Yeah. And he was just saying to me that even though he's made films all his life, that this was his first kind of legit effort.
Yeah, legit, real film, yeah.
So the follow-up question that I had was, how do you decide to take this kind of to have this then be the thing that inspires you toward professional filmmaking? It's such a personal story about your family.
That's a great question. And maybe, I think maybe the short answer is I didn't really know what I was getting into because I think it was difficult to tell just because I was so close to it. And I have a friend of mine
Mm.
who is a filmmaker who taught film, and I told him about this, and he really mentored me through it,
Okay.
and helped me because he wasn't connected to the story emotionally like I was. He was able to look at it objectively and very nicely, very kindly say, "Yeah, that makes no sense. What is that? You know, the film, the earlier drafts look totally different than this one,
Sure.
but I'm grateful for that. So to answer your question, I think the reason why I was able to, I wanted to make a film. I wanted to make a documentary. I love documentaries. And I was trying to, then the next question was what story? And then this story just happened to be going on simultaneously, unrelated. And I thought, well, why not this story? So it seemed easy enough. As I dove into it, I realized it's a lot more difficult when you're this close. I didn't want to be in the film at all, honestly. I wanted, but I couldn't tell it. I realized I couldn't tell the story unless I was in it.
Yeah.
So I limited. I didn't want to make it about me, but I couldn't tell it without me because it was me that she came to. So I was the sort of connection to the family. So
Yeah. So I think, well, first of all, greetings from Leon, Mexico. That's the
thank you.
place where I've been creating and checking out all the documentaries like yours and the Adam as well. Yeah, I mean, I think Joseph kind of already tapped kind of the same questions.
Mm,
And first of all, congratulations. Very
thank you.
touching, very
Thank you.
incredible story. And like you were saying, probably although it's a very personal story, it's kind of difficult not to feel detached from it. So, like you were
Yeah.
saying, you have to be part of your own voice in order to tell the story. And I was also curious because I want to ask you. Probably you said a little bit earlier. So, but how do you discover the moment from which you knew that there was a real distant cousin that was real for sure, and then you jump and start to develop that film? So
Yeah.
it wouldn't be that easy for sure.
Yeah. Well, I connected with her. We made our first connection like 2 years ago, um, and that was through Ancestry.com.
Hmm.
She reached out to me. You know, I thought it was a scam. All and then when we eventually started to realize there might be some truth to this, then I reached out to my mom, which is, you know, Rick, her father's older sister. And I wasn't sure how my family would embrace her. I didn't know. I mean, it's such a crazy story. Like, would they embrace her?
Hmm.
And I was inspired by my mom and my aunt and my uncles because they loved her, and they still love her. I mean, it's a connection for them to their younger brother who died 47 years ago. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that was our initial connection. But then it was later, after that was already in motion, that I was thinking about filmmaking and what I wanted to do, and it just became really clear to me that this was the story I need to tell. uh, I mean, it did help. I will say this is my grandfather, which is my mom's father. He was like me. He loved cameras. He was
Oh,
always taking still photos. He had an 8 millimeter silent film camera. We have reels and reels and reels of his footage. So in the film, you see some of that. That
yeah.
was his footage he took of his son, Rick, before he had died.
Yeah.
So that also gave me a feel like, okay, I can really do something with this. Great story, some great, footage. So it kind of all came together.
Yeah, and regarding on the footage and your visual style, I was also about to ask you. So probably you had tons of family footage, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, maybe Phil had some footage left, so maybe he can extend it a little bit further. Your story. That was the original plot line that you were following, or did
Yeah,
you have?
I was. Yeah, no, that's a good question. I was trying to figure out the plot line. Like, how do you? There's so much, and honestly, there's so many details. We cut a lot out, um,
Yeah,
because I was, to settle on the plot line that we settled on. There's a lot of details, even along her journey, that are really remarkable. Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot more footage and a lot more story. I could probably do more, but I was trying to just I kept it along the lines of this sort of story of rejection,
mhm.
and hurt on so many levels, and then at the end some redemption, and some reconciliation. I don't know. It was a super inspiring story to me. that's kind of where we landed on that.
Yeah, because yeah, like you were saying on the description, at the end it seemed like a very very sad story from
Yeah.
Stacy's point of
Yep.
view, and then
Yep.
he was rejected since her birth and so on, and
Yep.
then to the end of her grandmother as well, and it was very sad knowing that
Yeah.
her mother just didn't want to know anything, but at the end it was this um, lost family that also she had the value, the courage to dig into that
Yeah.
sort of story. So otherwise, she would be forever lost in their family search, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been having some kind of similar experiences, also doing some family research as well and ancestry. Sometimes you said like, wow, it
Yeah.
could be a scam, or there are
Right.
so many people with sharing your last name, etc. And also, but yeah, that was so thrilling to watch the story, and also that is very attached to your own identity.
Yeah.
And how was the process for your family when your mom, when you're already pitching, I'm gonna do a short film
Yeah.
about this? How was their reaction?
Well, that's a great question because I was nervous. First of all, they know that I made films my entire life. I've shot videos and home footage. I have a. But when I said I'm going to make an actual documentary, I mean, I think everybody was definitely very supportive. Um, it's funny because it took me a while, but this was also an exercise in courage for me to put myself out there. But when I finally put together the trailer, which was just like 2 minutes, just to kind of get at that point I hadn't even met Stacy. We had
Oh,
talked on the phone, but I'd never met her in person, and so there's still a lot to do. But with the limited footage I had, I created a trailer, and I sent it out to my mom and my aunts and my
mhm.
two uncles, who are the surviving siblings of Rick. I
Yeah.
sent it out on a Friday night and said, "Hey guys, here's the trailer for the documentary." And I went to bed. And my wife told me, she said, you got to be careful because um, this for you might just be a documentary, but for them, this is their kid brother. You really and I was like, oh no. So the first thing I did the next morning when I woke up is I called each of them and I said, listen, I'm sorry. I hope I wasn't insensitive. They knew I had talked about it. Wasn't a surprise, but just dived into it like that. But to a T, every one of them, they were absolutely ecstatic that I was doing it. And so I had so much support from them, from my wife. I mean, my wife was super supportive. Come to your wife and say, hey, I'm going to make a movie. You're like, what? What are you going to do? And she's been amazing. And my whole family's loved it. And it's come together much better, I think, than any of us thought. And so it's just been it's been very bonding and uplifting for all of us. And
Yeah.
Stacy's I think in the audience here watching, Stacy's here. She's been great. I mean, I wasn't gonna do anything without her full, support, and she's been great as well.
Yeah, because I was thinking maybe under different circumstances, maybe that this type of family documentary will be more like opening some wounds, and then at the end it was quite
Right.
opposite. They were discovering a missing link that they didn't know about Stacy, of course, but at the end it turned out in a very more bonding for the future. So that's quite
Yeah, we had talked about the idea, if her mother, her biological mother has cut off all ties with her, and so has her biological grandmother, and to my knowledge, they're both still alive. We had talked about
nice.
maybe trying to pursue them. I brought it up, but generally that was not, we didn't decide to go down that path. In fact, their names aren't even mentioned in there. Their
Mhm.
photos don't show up. That was a part of the story, but it's really a bigger story of Stacy's persistence, hanging on to hope when she was hopeless. That's what we stayed focused on with that, and we didn't want to, put anybody in a bad light any more than they might
Mm.
have already put themselves. But we didn't. That's not where we wanted to go with it. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, and also I think also struck me, but during the plot there was a part when it said that Stacy already approached first one of your aunties,
yeah,
right? Something, and then
yeah,
there was no reply at all, and then it was already called for a couple of years, and then you
yeah.
opened your ancestry account, you were doing your
Yep.
own search, and that's when she found you, right?
That was it. Yeah, she had reached out to three family members on my family, um two cousins and one and my mom actually, and they didn't reply. Just it was purely a mistake. I mean, she reached out to two of them digitally, and just they never saw. I mean, since now they've connected and everything is great, but they just missed it somehow. And then with my mom, she decided to go a more traditional route. She wrote a letter to my mom, and my mom never replied. And it turned out she sent it to a wrong address, an old address, and the letter came back to her. So yeah, she tried. She didn't get. I mean, it was just another hurdle she had to overcome. This one wasn't malicious in any way. This was just errors in communication. But yeah, I just happened to be working on my ancestry research, and I posted a photo of Rick Chatton, her father, and that's what started it all off. She contacted me like the next day, I think. So
Wow, and also blew my mind away when Stacy said like, "No, my daughter's a vivid resemblance of,
yeah,
my,
yeah,
my dad." It was
yeah.
amazing. Wow, it's a very
It was. It
cool
was
moment.
really sweet. It was really amazing. Yeah. So yeah, it was great. It was really an amazing story. It really is an amazing story. So I think Stacy in the last 2 years now, I was laughing with her because I think she's been with family more than I have. Like we counted, that's what we said in the film, like 8 times I think in the last 2 years,
Yeah,
various times, various ways. Like she was
sure.
traveling for something or someone was in town, but she made sure to connect in person. So it's really sweet.
Yeah, and how's been Stacy's reaction to the documentary? I mean, I already know that also great things for submitted to us. I know it's
Yeah.
already been in another festival. Has been the
Yeah.
reaction to other audience? Has
Yeah.
Stacy been able to attend some screenings or?
Well, this is the first. Well, no, this is the second screening. This is the first talkback that we've been involved
Oh,
in. So, and like I said, Stacy is out there. I believe she was going to be here, but she's been great. I mean, she had wanted, when I approached her initially, she said, I would like to write this all down, but it was such an emotional thing for her. She'd start and just couldn't continue because there's so much emotion and
yeah,
pain. So actually, the idea of me doing a documentary was really a good idea for her. I mean, she liked the idea because she could tell the story better. One of my uncles, one of Rick's older brothers, he said he was also really happy I made a documentary because he said I tried to tell the story and I can't tell it very well. I mean, I'm trying to, and then this happened, and then this, and then that, and he said I'm just glad you made it into a documentary so I can just say here, watch the story. So everybody has embraced it. Stacy's embraced it. She's her friends. She shared it with her friends, her family. It's been really well received.
great. And what about? Do you have a side project related with the same story, like maybe a short book or photographs or you want to plan
Um,
a re-editing or something?
yeah, no, that's is it. This is all I got right now. This is far as it lives right now. I yeah, no, nothing yet, but that's a good idea. I maybe could create some things to kind of go along with it. There's certainly more of the story to it. There's a lot of extra clips that we didn't even use in the documentary. There's so many details, but yeah, that's a good idea, actually. Thank you.
We
Yeah.
actually got a question
Yeah.
from Jeff
Sure.
Arias for you from
Oh, okay.
San
I know
Diego.
Jeff. Yep.
What other projects are you looking at? So I suppose it dovetails with what you were just saying. There's maybe more stuff that you could do with this story, but is there an additional story that you're looking at right now?
That's a great question. Yeah, well, I mean, I am trying to think like, what's my next story going to be, whether it's related to this or not. I kind of feel like this story, although it's not really finished, it's ongoing, but this project I felt like was kind of complete. Yeah. No, a friend of mine saw it and um, it's funny because he said, hey, he's actually my neighbor. I live in New York City. And he said, he's an older gentleman and he's retired and he used to manage a band back in the 70s and 80s, pretty well known rock band. And he saw my movie and he said, I have a box of VHS tapes of never before seen footage of this band. I
Wow.
won't mention the name, but just for his own privacy. But he said, what do you think? Could we make something with this? So we've had all that footage digitized and I've been helping him. it's a whole different story, right? They had hired a crew to follow these guys um, on tour back in 1980 through the UK, and so he's got all this footage, and their fan base is pretty big still, even though they're an old band. So I don't know that we're working on it. That's kind of in the early stages. He's very excited about it, so I'm helping him out with that. Um, but yeah, I mean that's it. I am always searching. I'm always writing down ideas and thoughts of what might be a good next thing. Honestly, I'd like to for my next thing. I'd like to try to do a feature length. I was a little intimidated by that at first, but now that I've done
Yeah.
short, I think maybe it wouldn't be too hard to extend it into a little longer.
Great.
So
Oh, that sounds like a gold mine you have there with your neighbor.
yeah, I know, right?
Make sure to submit the next project to us for sure. We will be
All right.
happy. Yeah, to
Yeah.
watch that band tour in the UK.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Thank you. But
Yeah,
I'm
I want
very
to
open.
see that
I'm trying
movie.
to figure out. Go ahead. Sorry.
I want to see that movie about the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got to make that. So.
Okay. All right. We're working on it. So.
And now, Phil, what about? Can you tell us a little bit about your the side of producing your short film? Did you apply for some funds or some crowdfunding? Do you
Yeah.
reach to Ancestry for some support or?
Good question. Yeah, and actually, my first thought was Ancestry with it in terms of funding, and that's why I made that 2-minute trailer.
Oh,
I did not include the trailer when I submitted this because, in hindsight, the trailer is terrible. I didn't want anybody, I don't want anybody to see it. But it was all I had. The woman Linda in the movie is my mom, so all I had was footage of her, and I had some footage from my grandfather. So with that, that the old footage. So with that, I made a 2-minute trailer, and yeah, Ancestry actually does have on their website, a place to pitch ideas. So I pitched it
wow.
twice, and they never, not even remotely a response. So that was just a trailer. But yeah, actually, when I shared it with my family, the trailer, just letting them know that I was going to do it, um, some of them came together and helped me out, and so that's how we funded it all. I was just gonna figure it out, honestly. I mean, I was gonna be really, really, really low budget. I've got some equipment, so I thought, well, you know, I, but it actually worked out really well, where I was able to get some help from my family to pay for everything, and
Okay.
so they, again, showing how much support I was getting, literally, from my family. So I didn't have to go outside and do anything. And it was a pretty low budget operation. I mean, there wasn't a lot of extra to it. We did, though, because of help from my family, we were able, like, Stacy lives in Phoenix, and I was planning to go out there with all my equipment, but because of this, we ended up flying her into New York City. We were able to put her into a hotel. We rented a small space where we could shoot the
Yeah.
interview. I got some pro cameras instead of using my cameras. So it actually upped the production value a little bit of the whole thing, which was fantastic. And it was great being in New York because that's where I live. So I didn't have to haul all my stuff to Phoenix. So it all actually worked out. I mean, it all came together really well.
Yeah, it's like everything run it out into all family project. So
It was, yeah.
your
Again,
family funded.
totally very supportive from my family. So
Wow.
yeah, I was really happy about it. I guess, it's my first film. There's part of me that thinks, okay, funding probably won't. It'll probably be a little bit harder next time. Whatever my project is.
Yeah.
I know people. That's a big part of making a movie. I felt very fortunate with this one. So
Great. Oh, congratulations again.
thank
And
you.
besides submitting to the Art of Brooklyn Film Festival, I think there's a lot of potential in this type of documentaries because they're like more like a niche film festival devoted to oral history, family
Yeah.
history. I can't
Yeah.
remember right now which other festivals, but yeah, you definitely have to submit it. So you
Thank you.
spread the word. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I might even revisit ancestry.com now. Now that I'm an official selection,
Yeah.
I've got a few laurels on it. I thought maybe I'll try to revisit, and it's done. Before it wasn't done, but maybe, I don't know. Maybe there'll be something there. So
I was going to suggest that actually.
yeah, thank you.
So it's a good impulse.
Yeah. Well,
You know,
it's hard to
it's
sell
different.
something that they can't see, but now that
Exactly.
you can see it,
Yeah.
maybe they would say, "Hey, oh, okay, that makes sense." So,
Right.
and
Yeah.
honestly, with DNA testing now, there's a lot more of this that's happening. Um, a lot more people are finding relatives that they didn't know or they lost or something. This is not as unique of a story, I think, as it might
Yeah.
have been in the past.
Yeah, and it's been turning into like this ancestry, the genealogy search, like a good business in a way, because on the other side, of course, that's the business side, but also
Hmm.
that's this family and the reconnection issues.
Right.
That's a really important thing. But that would be the quite opposite. I don't know, because Adam is not here with us so far, so but he got the opposite journey. Like he would travel to Europe, from Russia, Germany,
Oh,
and so
wow.
that's a different story. I mean, of course, in search in a different, but at the end, I think both stories came up with a very great result. I think you guys knew where you're moving forward. That's a good thing,
Hmm. Yeah.
despite being a constraint of time. But you knew what you're looking for. And
Yeah.
that's
So we
honestly
have
that's a very honest
another.
documentary. Yeah.
Sorry, we have
Thank you.
another question from the audience. Lucas Smith wants
Okay.
to know if any other documentaries or stories influenced you in the making of this doc, making it the way that you did, regarding the style and the way that you told the story.
That's a great question, Lucas. Yes. Um, that's a good question. I love watching documentaries, so it probably was a lot of documentaries that influenced it. One of the earlier drafts of my documentary, you know, well, one of my first ideas was to open with me at the airport meeting Stacy for the first time. That was actual footage. That was the first time I met her in person,
Wow.
and so I had a cameraman with me filming me doing everything, and I was all mic'd up and everything. But we opened with me. This was the opening shot with me driving through the parking lot at Newark Airport in my car, and I thought it was cool. And my friend, my mentor here, and my filmmaker, my friend I mentioned earlier, he said, "What is this? An episode of Cops? What are you doing?" So what I thought was, so maybe that was one of my big influences was Cops. But what felt really cool to me, what was it? And he helped me trim it down to
Yeah,
really what was
funny.
really good, what was really important. And then we ended up deciding to start with one of the strongest parts of the film, I think, visually, is the old footage,
Yeah.
and my mom's voiceover there talking about his death. Yeah, so I don't know that I like a lot of documentaries, and I probably influence a lot of places, but Cops I try not to use that as much, so not as much.
Well, you actually got a comment from Stacy.
Oh,
Oh,
Stacy.
wow.
Thank you for making this film, Phil, and
Uh,
telling my story. Thank you most of all for accepting me into your family.
Wow.
uh,
So
she makes me cry, so I got to
yeah.
be, she's a sweet.
Well, I have to tell you
Yeah.
that for me the doc, uh, the thing that you kind of gestured toward was the healing that bringing into her family did,
Mm,
particularly for the older members of your family who lost their brother,
yeah.
who um, knew her father and were wounded by his death. That
Yeah.
um, it, that discovering her and the process of reintegrating her into your family healed that for them or brought them to a new. It was like an unexpected gift out of nowhere. Um, having suffered through my own losses in my family, I can only imagine what that would be like to suddenly be introduced to someone who could bring a little piece of that person back to you, and make you kind of hold the tragedy of their loss in a different way. So it's such a beautiful, complicated moment in your family that you were able to capture, and you can see it on your mom's face and on the face of your older relatives, 100%, when they embrace her in the airport, and then even when she's speaking and they're not speaking, you linger on their faces for a moment. You can absolutely see in their eyes that how important the moment it is for them. And I was really struck as a viewer with how generous they were sharing that with us, so that we could see it. So it seems like they were being generous with you by allowing you to film it and supporting you in making it. But really, it's a larger act of generosity. and certainly generous towards Stacy, right? Opening the family up
Absolutely.
to include her. But it's like
Courageous,
a larger act of generosity sharing the film.
Yeah.
You know.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think for Stacy, it was a huge amount of courage to be able to open her heart up. You know, there's a lot of sharing, you know, when we were interviewing, and a lot of tears, and but good. I mean, it was really amazing that she was willing to do that. So, yeah, I mean, she had said one of her hopes in this was to inspire somebody out there who might be in a similar situation to not give up. You know, I mean, 45 years into her life is when we finally made the connection. It's a long time to wait, you know, but to not give up. But she did it. You know, she hung in there. So.
Well, it's so poignant to me too that the missed connections with your side of the family were just a result of, they weren't purposeful. You know, it always makes me think, if someone doesn't get back to me, we read into it that they don't want to talk to me or something. And sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's just nothing. You know. But having gone through the earlier experience with the other side of her biological family, I could see how that would be daunting. And the fact that it didn't stop her is like another unspoken moment in the film, that she got to the point where you met her in the airport by continuing to open herself up to the possibility of being rejected. And there's something really so amazing about that.
Courageous.
Yeah.
This story, it does have a lot of levels to it, which I didn't even really realize until we started telling it, you know, and the gift, you know, obviously of her healing, but the healing of my family, you know, of my mom and her sister and her siblings and the loss of their brother. I mean, it's just so layered, you know.
Yeah.
And someone pointed out that I didn't even realize it starts at an airport and ends at airport. I didn't even catch that when I mean, that was just, I'm like, oh, it's true. There's a sort of a completion of it, you know? I don't know. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you guys. Thank you for having me on this.
Thank you so much for your work. It means a lot. And I think sharing a story like this, kind of particularly in this moment, is really meaningful to us. That's about connections and about how hard it is to make connections, and how, as you say, courageous you have to be, and then how generous you have to be. So you captured all that, and I was really glad we were able to share it with our audience.
Thank you. It's amazing having the chance to witness your personal journey. So sharing with us your profound love for your family, and at the same time opening a window to reflect on the importance of family trees, for sure. And this type of situation is very unlikely to happen, but in the good way. All the stars align together, and that was a happy ending for
absolutely
and closure.
Happy endings. Here's the happy ending.
Yeah.
So the punchline is, make more films and submit them to us. We would love to see you.
Okay. Great. That sounds great. Well, thank you for choosing my film. I appreciate it. I wasn't sure. You know, you put it out there in the universe, in the world, and you're like, we'll see. You gotta stick. You know. Put it out and see what happens.
It had a great story. It was quite honest, and the characters speak for themselves. So
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you,
Alan. We're going to catch up with Adam at his encore screening, and so we'll do a Q&A. I'll connect with you off of this call. Well, we'll take care of it then. I just wanted to make sure that you weren't confused. Conscious of the time, I think that we should bring this to a close. It feels like we have said what we need to say about this film. Thank you so much, Phil, for making this work and sharing it with us and letting us share it with our audience. It means a lot.
All right.
So, thank you. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.